Please go back and look at part 1 and 2 for context. We're talking about people who attempt to squelch your voice through misinformation. I made this in response to the young lady at Rahima, whose beginning statement of one of her many posts was, if you are an American voter, you do not have the right to only focus on domestic issues and ignore what our international policies are. And then she goes in and posts a graph of racial and ethnic composition of 2022 voters, and specifically hones in on white Democratic voters, buckling down on them, ignoring international policies. And then she goes on to say, and I quote, because the United States, and therefore all of its citizens, whether knowingly or unknowingly, have a very real, severe debt that we, so I'm assuming that she's American, owe to people living outside of our country. And then she goes on to explain how the United States, to this current day, are still pillaging and destroying other countries. And although on the surface her statement is steeped in facts, there is a greater strategic implication that completely goes over her head, which I'll touch on later. She then continues to state that she has learned about white privilege since 2020, and her message just becomes a bit nonsensical after that, stating that we, because I'm assuming that she is identifying as a white person living in the United States, that it is the obligation of white Democrats to dismantle those systems and stop them. She goes on to state, I can appreciate that you feel that there's a lot at stake for yourself and for your community in this upcoming presidential election, and in all caps, you need to understand, which to me just shows through her tone of voice and hand gestures that she hasn't really taken the time to understand her own white privilege, which is completely set aside by her dictating to people who are attempting to make a change on how they should vote based on a complete lack of research into the nuances of American society and how the system is set up. She continues on by condescending white Democratic voters about how they do not understand how their votes affect international foreign policies, which just gets progressively worse with her absolute lack of understanding. Her lack of understanding of how the system works, and apparently the differences between the choices we have in the upcoming presidential election.